I was traveling alone for work and booked a last-minute Airbnb just outside the city, a cozy little guest house behind someone's home. The pictures looked great, the price was cheap, and the host, Mark, seemed polite and responsive. He even met me at the driveway when I arrived, handing over the keys with a wide, toothy grin. "Make yourself at home," he said. "You're the only guest this weekend." The place was spotless, almost unnaturally so. It felt more like a display unit than a lived-in home. Still, I was tired and grateful to have a quiet place to crash. That night, while unpacking, I noticed something odd. A smoke detector pointed directly at the bed. I didn't think much of it at first, but as I brushed my teeth, I spotted another one above the shower. Something didn't feel right. I stood on a chair and unscrewed the detector above the bed. Inside wasn't a sensor, but a small, blinking red light and a lens. A camera. My stomach dropped. I grabbed the second unit from the bathroom, same thing. Tiny cameras, hidden in plain sight. I didn't know what to do. It was nearly midnight. The house was on a quiet street, surrounded by woods. No neighbors. I tried to stay calm. Packed my things. I didn't even bother changing out of my pajamas. As I opened the door to leave, my phone buzzed. "Unknown number, you shouldn't touch things that aren't yours." I froze. A few seconds later, another text came in. "Unknown number, smile." I looked up. A red light blinked faintly from a corner of the living room, one I hadn't noticed before. I bolted. Got in my car and drove without looking back. I didn't stop until I hit a 24-hour gas station. I called the police. Showed them the cameras. Showed them the texts. But when they returned to the Airbnb with me later that night, it was empty. No cameras. No hidden devices. The detectors were real. The host, Mark, didn't exist. The house was listed under a different name entirely. No record of any recent bookings. And the worst part? When I checked my phone again, the messages were gone. All of them. The police officer, a tired-looking woman named Ramirez, regarded me with thinly veiled suspicion. "Ma'am, are you sure you didn't just have a bad dream?" "I have the cameras," I insisted, digging through my overnight bag where I'd hastily stuffed them. My fingers touched nothing but clothing. I emptied the entire bag onto the gas station's grimy floor. No cameras. "I swear they were here," I whispered, my voice cracking. He was watching me. Someone was watching me. Officer Ramirez sighed, making notes in her little book. "We'll check the property," she said finally. But without evidence. The ride back to the Airbnb was excruciating. Every shadow on the road seemed to reach for the patrol car. I directed them down the winding driveway, my hands trembling as I pointed toward the guest house. It looked different now. Darker. The windows like empty eyes. A man opened the main house door before we'd even knocked. He was elderly, stooped, nothing like Mark. He listened to Officer Ramirez's explanation with growing confusion. "I don't rent this property," he said, gesturing to the guest house. "It's been empty for months. Needs repairs. But I stayed here tonight," I insisted. "A man named Mark gave me the keys." The old man shook his head slowly. "My name is Robert. I've lived here 40 years. There's no Mark." They humored me by checking the guest house. The lock was rusted. Inside was nothing but dusty furniture and cobwebs, a forgotten space, clearly uninhabited for ages. "The listing," I stammered, frantically pulling up the Airbnb app. My booking history was empty. The listing was gone, like it never existed. Officer Ramirez drove me to a motel. "Get some rest," she advised, her tone gentler now, tinged with pity rather than suspicion. "Stress can do strange things to the mind." But I knew what I'd seen. What I'd felt. Sleep was impossible. I sat rigidly in the center of the bed, afraid to close my eyes. Around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Unknown number, did you think it would be that easy to leave?" I dropped the phone like it had burned me. It buzzed again on the carpet. Unknown number, I'm still watching. I snatched it up, took screenshots this time. Evidence. My hands shook so badly I could barely operate the screen. In the morning, I went straight to the police station, clutching my phone like a lifeline. A different officer took my statement. He scrolled through my messages, his expression growing increasingly concerned. "There's nothing here," he said finally. I grabbed the phone. The screenshots were gone. The text thread empty. "But I took screenshots," I whispered. The officer's face softened with unmistakable sympathy. "Maybe you should talk to someone," he suggested quietly. "We can recommend." "I'm not crazy." The words came out too loud, too desperate. That afternoon, I checked out of the motel and drove 4 hours to my sister's house. I didn't tell her why I'd come, just that my business trip had ended early. That night, as I finally began to feel safe, my sister knocked on the guest room door. "Someone left this for you," she said, handing me a small package. Inside was a smoke detector. And a note, "Don't forget to smile." I never found out who Mark really was. I never returned to that town. But sometimes, late at night, I still noticed the small red lights blinking in the corners of rooms, watching, waiting, recording. And I wonder who's on the other side of the lens. It was late, and I was tired. My flight had been delayed twice, and I just wanted to get home. I called an Uber like I always do, double-checked the license plate, and got in. The driver, a quiet middle-aged man named Roy, gave me a quick nod. "Airport, right?" he asked. I confirmed, buckled up, and leaned back. At first, everything was fine. He followed the expected route. I zoned out, scrolling through my phone. But then I noticed we missed an exit. "Hey," I said, "I think we're off track." "The app says." "Short detour," he interrupted. "Just some traffic up ahead. We'll get around it." I watched the screen. The route turned into back roads. Fewer streetlights. Then, no streetlights at all. "Seriously, can you just stick to the highway?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. He didn't answer. I texted a friend my location. No signal. I turned on the flashlight on my phone, subtly angled it toward his dashboard. The Uber app wasn't running. That's when I really started to panic. I reached for the door handle. Locked. I looked at the window control. Disabled. "Where are we going?" I demanded. He finally spoke again. "You shouldn't have gotten in." I froze. The car turned onto a dirt path, headlights cutting through trees. We were in the middle of nowhere. I grabbed my bag, fumbled for anything I could use, my keys, pepper spray, anything. Then he stopped the car. "Out," he said calmly. I didn't move. "Now." I opened the door slowly and stepped out. He didn't follow. He just sat there, watching me. Then, without a word, he reversed into the trees and vanished. I stumbled through the woods, crying, until I saw a farmhouse in the distance with a porch light on. I ran to it, banged on the door. A woman answered, thank God. She let me in, called the police. When they arrived and searched the area, they found tire tracks. But no driver. No car. No one named Roy registered on Uber that night. No trip history. My request was never logged. But I know I was there. I still have the bruises on my shoulder from the door I slammed into. I still remember the look in his eyes. And sometimes, when I order a ride now, I check the face of every driver. Just in case. Because one day, I know he's going to come back. The police report sits in my drawer, filed under suspicious circumstances. The officers were kind but skeptical. They documented everything, my torn jacket sleeve, the mud on my shoes, the timestamp of my last logged location before my signal disappeared. But without a suspect, without evidence beyond my testimony, the case went cold. They asked if I'd been drinking. If I was on medication. If I'd been under stress lately. Their questions felt like accusations, each one chipping away at my certainty. Maybe you got into the wrong car, one officer suggested. It happens all the time. But I knew the license plate matched. I'd checked it 3 times, like I always do. The woman who helped me that night, Eleanor Madsen, became an unexpected ally. A retired nurse with silver hair and steady hands, she made me tea while we waited for the police to arrive. "I believe you," she said simply when I finished my story. "These woods have stories." She told me that 5 years ago, another person, a college student, had knocked on her door in the middle of the night with a similar story. A detour, a strange driver, an abrupt abandonment in the forest. The police found nothing then, too. I've visited Eleanor twice since that night. She lives alone in that farmhouse, her nearest neighbor 3 miles away. "Aren't you afraid?" I asked her once. She showed me the shotgun she keeps by her bed and the 3 locks on her door. "Fear is a luxury for people who haven't learned to prepare," she said. "My therapist says what happened was real, but the meaning I've assigned to it might not be. Random acts of strangeness happen," she told me. "Not everything has a purpose or a pattern. But I can't shake the feeling that it wasn't random at all. That I was chosen specifically. Last week, I found a small package on my doorstep. No shipping label, no return address. Inside was a car air freshener, the same pine scent that had filled Roy's car. Underneath it was a note that read, "See you soon." The police added it to my file. They installed a security camera above my door. They told me to be vigilant. I haven't called an Uber since that night. I carpool with coworkers or take the bus. Sometimes I walk, even in bad weather, rather than get into a stranger's car. My friends think I'm being paranoid. Maybe I am. But sometimes, when I'm walking home late, I notice a sedan slowing down beside me. Dark blue, just like the one that night. The window rolls down, just a crack. I never stop to look inside. I just walk faster, keys clutched between my fingers. I've moved twice. Changed my phone number. Deleted all my rideshare apps. I use cash whenever possible. I've become a ghost in my own life, trying to disappear from whatever system allowed him to find me in the first place. Still, I know it's only a matter of time. Last night, I dreamed of him again. In the dream, I'm back in his car, but this time, I'm in the driver's seat. He's beside me, watching. The roads stretch endlessly ahead, dark and unfamiliar. "Where are we going?" I ask him. He smiles. It's the first time I've seen him smile. "You know the way," he says. And the terrifying part is, in the dream, I do. When I wake, my hands are gripping the sheets like they're holding a steering wheel. And for just a moment, I swear I can smell pine. I don't know what Roy wanted that night. I don't know why he took me into those woods only to let me go. I don't know if he's done this to others, or if he'll do it again. But I know one thing for certain, the next time we meet, one of us isn't walking away. During my residency at a city hospital, I worked a lot of night shifts. The halls were quiet, the fluorescent lights always buzzing, and everything had that faint antiseptic smell. It was during one of those nights that I first noticed room 6A. It wasn't on my rounds, and it didn't show up on any of the shift logs. Still, every now and then, I'd see the door cracked open, light spilling into the hallway. Sometimes I heard faint breathing, slow, labored, or soft tapping on the window. One night, curiosity got the best of me. I checked the directory at the nurse's station. No room 6A. The numbers jumped from 5F to 7B. But the door was there. Physically there. I asked around. Most nurses shrugged it off. "Old wing," one said. "Probably storage." Another rolled her eyes. "You don't want to go snooping in that part of the hospital." Still, I checked the door again the next night. This time, it was closed, but I heard a voice from inside. "Doctor?" It was barely a whisper, but definitely real. I opened the door slowly. Inside was a perfectly arranged hospital room. Dimly lit. A man sat upright in the bed, pale and frail, wearing a gown too large for his thin frame. Tubes ran from his arms to unplugged machines. He looked at me and smiled weakly. "You finally came." I didn't know what to say. I checked the chart at the foot of the bed. It was blank. Completely blank. I asked his name. He just said, "I've been waiting." When I stepped out to call a supervisor, the door slammed shut behind me. Hard. Loud. When I opened it again, the room was empty. Bed gone. Lights off. Just an old mop bucket in the corner. The next morning, I checked the building records. That wing had been shut down for over 30 years after a fire. Most of it had never been repaired. I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And every time I walk that hallway now, room 6A is still there. Sometimes open. Always waiting. I should have left it alone. Any rational doctor would have chalked it up to exhaustion, to the mind playing tricks after too many consecutive night shifts. But the memory of that man's face, gaunt, hopeful, somehow familiar, haunted me. Dr. Marquez, the hospital's longest-serving physician, found me in the archives a week later, surrounded by dusty files and microfiche records. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, half joking. When I didn't laugh, her expression sobered. "What are you looking for down here?" I hesitated before answering. "Information about a wing that burned down 30 years ago." She sat down slowly, her eyes never leaving my face. "Who told you about the fire?" "No one. I found something." The words felt inadequate. Dr. Marquez glanced around to ensure we were alone. That wing wasn't just damaged in a fire. It was quarantined. 6 patients died of an unidentified respiratory illness. Fast-acting. Their lungs simply stopped. And one of them was in room 6A? I ventured. She looked startled. "How did you know that?" I didn't answer. Instead, I asked, "Who was he?" "Dr. Andrew Keene. He was one of us, a third-year resident. He was treating the patients when he became infected himself." She paused. "They sealed the wing with him still inside. Said it was too dangerous to retrieve his body." My blood ran cold. They left him to die. It was a different time. People were scared. She studied my face. "Why are you asking about this now?" I couldn't tell her what I'd seen. She'd think I was having a breakdown. Maybe I was. Instead, I thanked her and returned the files. That night, I took an extra shift. I needed to see room 6A again, to prove to myself it was just a storage closet, an architectural quirk, anything but what I feared. The hallway was darker than usual. Several bulbs had burned out, creating pools of shadow between the harsh fluorescent islands. Room 6A's door was closed, but a thin line of yellow light outlined its frame. I stood there for what felt like hours, my hand hovering near the handle. From inside came the soft, rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor. When I finally pushed the door open, the room was different. More equipment, more tubes, and the man, Dr. Keene, looked worse. His breathing was shallow, his skin almost translucent. The machines around him were from another era, bulky, analog devices I'd only seen in medical history textbooks. "You came back," he whispered, his voice like paper rustling. "Dr. Keene?" I asked. His eyes widened slightly. "You know me." What do you want?" He gestured weakly toward a clipboard hanging on the wall. I took it down. Unlike the blank chart from before, this one was filled with handwritten notes, observations about 6 patients, their deteriorating conditions, his own symptoms. "My research," he said. "They need to know. The pathogen, it's not what they thought." I flipped through the pages. His notes were detailed, methodical, the work of a dedicated physician facing his own mortality while still trying to save others. "Tell them," he rasped. "Before it happens again." The lights flickered violently. The heart monitor's beat became erratic, then flatlined into a single, sustained tone. Dr. Keen's body convulsed once, then went still. I ran from the room, clutching the clipboard. When I looked back, the door was gone, just a smooth wall where room 6A had been. The hospital board didn't believe me, of course. But the research notes were real, yellowed with age but legible. They identified a rare fungal infection, not a virus as originally suspected. A condition that could become dormant for decades before resurfacing. 3 months later, 2 patients in the ICU developed identical symptoms to those Dr. Keen had documented. Because of his notes, we knew how to treat it. We saved them. I still work nights at the hospital. Sometimes, I walk past where room 6A should be. The door never reappeared, but occasionally, I catch the faint scent of antiseptic and hear a whispered thank you from behind a wall that shouldn't be able to speak. Dr. Keen waited 30 years for someone to listen. I'm glad it was me. I'd only lived in the apartment complex for about 6 months when I met Greg, my next-door neighbor. Quiet guy, early 40s, always wore the same faded hoodie and jeans. We'd occasionally nod at each other in the hallway, maybe exchange a few words about the weather. That was it. Until the night he knocked on my door. 3:07 a.m. I had been up reading, and the knock made me jump. I peeked through the peephole. It was Greg. He looked different. Pale. Wide-eyed. Sweating, even though it was chilly. "Sorry," he said when I opened the door a crack. I need to tell someone." I hesitated, then let him in. He paced in my living room for a few seconds, wringing his hands. Then he said it. "I don't think I'm real." I blinked. Thought he was joking. But his voice shook. "I found something in my closet tonight. A box. I never put it there. Inside were pictures of me. Hundreds. Some I recognized. Others I swear are from places I've never been. With people I don't know. But I'm in all of them. Always in the background. Sometimes looking straight at the camera." He reached into his hoodie and pulled out one of the photos. It was old, yellowed. It showed a street scene, 1980s cars, old signage, and there was Greg, unmistakably, standing in the corner. "I was born in 1983, he said. I didn't know what to say. He looked exhausted. There were journals, too, he continued. Describing my thoughts. Word for word. Even things I've never said out loud. And at the bottom of the box was a note. He paused, then handed it to me. It read, "Resetting in 72 hours. Deletion scheduled. Thank you for your participation." I tried to ask more, but Greg stood suddenly. "I shouldn't have come. They'll know. They always know." He left. That was the last time I saw him. I knocked on his door the next day. No answer. The super said no one by that name ever lived there. The unit was vacant. Had been for months. But sometimes, when I walk past his door, I swear I hear whispering. And I found that same photo he gave me, back on my coffee table the next morning. I didn't sleep that night. Or the next. The photo sat on my kitchen counter where I'd left it after finding it on the coffee table. I was afraid to touch it again, as if its yellowed edges might burn my fingers. I called the building management the day after Greg disappeared. "I'm trying to reach my neighbor," I explained, careful to keep my voice steady. "In 4B. 4B has been empty since the renovation," the woman said. "Are you sure you have the right unit?" "But I've seen him," I insisted. "Greg. Tall guy, early 40s, wears a hoodie." A long pause. "There's no Greg in our records, sir." I hung up and immediately went to the super's apartment on the ground floor. Ray had been around forever, knew everyone. He'd mentioned Greg once or twice, I was sure of it. Ray looked confused when I described Greg. "Don't know anyone fitting that description," he said, scratching his beard. "And I've been here 12 years. But he's lived next door to me for months." Unit 4B. Ray's expression changed from confusion to concern. 4B's been vacant since that water damage last year. We're still waiting on permits to renovate. I convinced him to check the apartment with me. When he unlocked the door, the stale air hit us immediately. The unit was completely empty. Dust sheets covered what little furniture remained. The closet, where Greg said he'd found the box, was empty except for a single wire hanger. "See?" Ray said. "Nobody's been living here." But as I turned to leave, something caught my eye. In the corner of the room, barely visible against the baseboards, a small photograph. I picked it up while Ray wasn't looking. It showed a park I recognized a few blocks away. A family picnic, maybe from the 1990s based on the clothing. And there in the background, sitting on a bench reading a newspaper, was Greg. That night, I spread both photographs on my kitchen table, studying them under a bright lamp. The resemblance was undeniable. Same face, same posture. The Greg in these photos was identical to my neighbor, not just similar, but exactly the same. He hadn't aged between the 1980s photo and the 1990s one. I became obsessed. I started researching the building's history, scrolling through public records and old newspaper articles. Nothing about Greg. But I did find something strange. Over the past 50 years, the building had an unusually high turnover rate. People moved in, stayed briefly, then disappeared without explanation. 3 days after Greg's visit, exactly 72 hours, I heard sounds from 4B. Not just whispering this time, but a heavy dragging noise. I pressed my ear against the wall. Click. Whir. Static. Then voices, clinical and detached. Subject GR3447 deletion complete. Memory extraction successful. Moving to phase 4. I ran next door and pounded on 4B's door. No answer. I kept knocking until my knuckles bled. When I returned to my apartment, a small brown box sat in the center of my living room floor. I hadn't left it there. Inside were dozens of photographs of me. In places I'd never been. With people I'd never met. Dating back decades before I was born. At the bottom was a familiar note, resetting in 72 hours. Deletion scheduled. Thank you for your participation. The next morning, I packed a bag. I had to leave, get as far away as possible. As I reached for my door, someone knocked. 3 precise taps. Through the peephole, I saw a woman I'd never seen before. She wore a gray suit and held a clipboard. "We need to talk about Greg," she said through the door. "And about your upcoming reset." I didn't answer. "We can do this the easy way," she continued, her voice eerily calm. "Or we can extract you like we did with GR3447. My hands trembled as I backed away from the door. The photographs were still spread across my kitchen table. In one, the newest one, I noticed something I'd missed before. Behind me was a calendar. Tomorrow's date was circled in red. The knocking continued, more insistent now. I still don't know what they want. What I am. Why I have memories of a life I'm increasingly certain I never lived. But I know this, I won't be here when they come back tomorrow. I'm leaving this account where someone might find it. If you're reading this and you live in apartment 4A at 1270, West Lake Avenue, run. Don't talk to your neighbors. Don't look too closely at your memories. And if someone named Greg knocks on your door at 3:07 a.m., don't answer. Because I don't think any of us are real. When I moved to the suburbs, I was looking for quiet. A reset. My divorce had just finalized, and I needed space. The house was older but charming, with a picket fence and a view of the woods. Best of all, the neighbors seemed nice. Especially the man next door, Thomas. He was in his late 50s. Kind, mild-mannered, always offering to help carry groceries or lend tools. We got into the habit of chatting at the mailbox. He told me he lived alone since his wife passed. He baked. Gave me cookies once. They were amazing. After a few months, he invited me over for dinner. Said it was his way of thanking me for being a good neighbor. I almost said no. I wish I had. His home was spotless. Cozy, even. Dinner was delicious. We talked about books, music, life. Nothing felt off until I asked where his wife had been buried. He paused. "Oh," he said softly, "she's still here." He smiled, like it was a joke. I laughed nervously. He didn't. After dessert, he excused himself to use the bathroom. I stood to stretch, looked around the room. That's when I noticed the corner of a doorframe, half hidden behind a shelf. It led to the basement. The door was cracked open. I don't know what made me look. Curiosity, instinct, maybe something darker. I crept down the stairs, one hand on the rail. It was cold. Smelled like damp earth and metal. The light was dim, but I could make out shelves, boxes, and something covered in a tarp. I pulled it back. There were mannequins. Dozens. Some dressed. Some not. All arranged around a single old armchair, where a woman's skeleton sat. Dressed in a wedding gown. I backed away, heart hammering in my chest. Something cracked under my shoe. I looked down, a Polaroid. It was me. At my mailbox. Smiling. Footsteps creaked above me. "You shouldn't have seen that," Thomas said softly, descending the stairs. I don't remember exactly how I got out. I ran, screamed, flagged down a passing car. The police arrived. But by the time they searched his house, everything was gone. The basement was empty. No mannequins. No skeleton. No Polaroids. Thomas vanished that night. Sometimes I wonder if I imagined it. But I still have that one photo. The one of me at the mailbox. And on the back, in neat handwriting, it says, "Next time, don't snoop." The police investigation lasted 3 weeks. Detective Morales, a tired woman with sharp eyes, interviewed me 6 times. Each session ended the same way, with her looking at me like I was either lying or crazy. "We found nothing," she repeated during our final meeting. "No evidence of mannequins, no sign of human remains. The basement shows no indication that anything was stored there recently." "But the photo," I started. "The photo proves nothing except that someone took your picture at your mailbox," she said. "It could have been anyone." But it wasn't anyone. It was Thomas. I knew it with the same certainty that I knew my own name. After the investigation closed, I almost sold my house. But something kept me there, a morbid curiosity, perhaps. Or a need for validation. I wasn't crazy. I knew what I'd seen. I started researching Thomas. His real name was Thomas Whitley. He'd lived in the neighborhood for only 4 years, not the decades he'd implied. Before that, there was no trace of him. As if he'd appeared from thin air. I visited the local historical society, scrolled through microfiche of old newspapers. The librarian, Mrs. Hanson, noticed my frustrated searching. "Looking for something specific?" she asked. I hesitated, then showed her Thomas's photo from the neighborhood directory. Her smile faltered. "Oh. Him. You know him?" She glanced around, then lowered her voice. "Not personally. But there was a case, years ago. 1978, a man who looked just like him, could be his father, was questioned about his wife's disappearance. Nothing came of it. They moved away. She helped me find the article. The resemblance was uncanny. The man's name was Edward Whitley. His wife, Catherine, had vanished without a trace. The photo showed Edward standing stoically before their suburban home, the same floor plan as Thomas's house, but in a different town. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the skeleton and the wedding dress. About Thomas's words, "She's still here." A week later, a package arrived at my door. No return address. Inside was a small box wrapped in silver paper and a card that read, "A housewarming gift from a neighbor." My hands trembled as I unwrapped it. Inside was a porcelain figurine of a woman in a wedding dress, her face painted with delicate features and a serene smile. At the bottom was an inscription, "Catherine, 1978. I dropped it. The head broke off, rolling across my kitchen floor. That night, I heard noises from next door. Thomas's house had remained empty since his disappearance, the property tied up in police investigations and legal limbo. But I distinctly heard footsteps. A door opening and closing. I called Detective Morales. She sent a patrol car, but they found nothing. "The house is still sealed," the officer told me. "No one's been inside." 2 days later, Mrs. Hanson called me. Her voice was urgent. "I found something else." Edward Whitley wasn't the first. There was another case in 1962. Different name, same face. Same story, wife disappeared. "How is that possible?" I asked. "I don't know. But there's something else." In all 3 cases, 1962, 1978, and now, there was a new neighbor. A recent divorcee who moved in next door. The line went silent as the implication sank in. That night, I packed a bag. I couldn't stay in that house another night. As I was loading my car, I noticed something on my porch, a freshly baked cookie on a plate with a note, "I've missed our chats at the mailbox." I left town that night and never returned. I changed my name, moved across the country. But sometimes, when I get my mail, I feel eyes watching me. And occasionally, new neighbors bring cookies to welcome me to the neighborhood. I never eat them. And I never, ever look in their basements.